Hi there, and welcome to the third official installment of the Sage Running podcast. I got my co-host here, the mastermind behind Sage Running, Coach Sandi Nypaver.
Hi, trying it out.
Yeah, no, this is going to be great. So we could bounce some ideas off, take topics from you guys, always open to suggestions, but really do appreciate all the feedback on the podcast series as well as these YouTube videos. Be sure to check out Sandi's YouTube channel, Running Wild to Believe, for more of what we're going to talk about a little bit on this podcast with what went down at the Run 100 for me, just general ultra marathon training tips in general, what Sandi's got on deck next, running form, core exercises, nutrition, you name it. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, so I'm happy to join the podcast. We'll see how it goes. If you follow me on YouTube, you know I'm not always great in front of the camera, so it's a little intimidating being filmed as well, but try it out. Excited to be here and hopefully add a little something to the podcast. So yeah.
Well, we got to plug Avery here because we're indulging a little bit in some nice refreshing brews. I'm drinking a Pow Day IPA, which is an IPA from Avery Brewing, of course, that actually has some coffee in it. Ozo Coffee, which is a local Boulder coffee shop. We actually really like your coffee, and it's very subtle in the mix. It's also 8.1% alcohol, but a great IPA. It's got this nice graphic design. You could see it if you guys are watching the video. And then Sandi, you could tell them what you're drinking.
I have this awesome Chai High by Avery. I think it's my favorite beer. I'm a little sad because it's only seasonal, but highly suggest trying it. It's awesome. I've got it in my Elf the movie glass. I borrowed it from my sister, so drinking in style. Don't get me wrong, no offense, I don't drink like Sage, but occasionally on a weekend or after a workout, I like my beer. And today's Sunday and I had a workout, so perfect time to enjoy the Chai High beer.
Yeah, it's a unique taste. So Avery Brewing plug, Boulder, Colorado. Actually, I'll put this in the screenshot. Okay, that's enough. I'm bouncing the mic around. Let's get into the heart of the podcast here. I know some people are probably curious about how I failed again at 100 miles run road.
Failing's a bad word. Just didn't execute well.
Yeah. I mean, for those of you that don't know, I didn't finish the Run 100. That was going to be my second key focus race of the 100. It's going to be my second consecutive 100-mile race of the summer, of the year, actually. I'm not planning anymore.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. So, it wasn't a great idea maybe, but I wanted to try to redeem myself at 100, and I epically failed. I failed way worse than I think I did at Western States because I didn't finish. I dropped out at mile 52, and it was really a combination of things. We're still trying to piece it together, but ultimately I think I overdid things a little bit with training, and my legs came out really tired. I was working way too hard, way too early in the race, not even running under course record pace, but it led to all sorts of dehydration issues, stomach issues again, and ultimately me pulling the plug in the middle of the night, getting really cold at mile 52, really high at this aid station. And first, before I get into all that, we should say congrats to all the finishers who finished this race. It has a really high dropout rate. It's a really tough high altitude race with temperature changes from being pretty warm during the day to being very, very cold at night. As well as the race winners, Alex Nichols,
and Courtney.
Who ran, and Courtney.
Is it DeWatt? I don't want to say her last name wrong, but I think that's it. She ran an awesome race. I don't think a lot of people have heard about her yet, but she's definitely a stellar runner. I believe out of Golden, Colorado.
Golden, yeah.
So huge congrats to her. I'm sure we'll be seeing her around a lot more.
She's done some of the 24-hour races.
Okay.
She's run very fast at more flat races.
Okay.
I believe. I don't know if it was the track or the road. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it was just like 2 weeks ago. She got second overall at a 50K.
Okay.
50K.
So
that's impressive. That's good range.
Yeah.
From road racing to mountain running. That's impressive. Not everyone can pull it off.
Exactly. And then Alex Nichols, it was his 100-mile debut.
Yeah.
And I don't think he had run. I mean, he's been around mountain running for a long time. Obviously, running against him at Speed Goat, and he did beat Zach Miller and I at Les Templiers a couple years ago. Won the Pikes Peak Marathon this year, 3 weeks ago, before stepping into Run Rabbit Run. I don't think he had won the Mount Blanc 80K as well last summer, but I don't think he'd ever run more than 80K.
Yeah. He's just a
in
smart
distance, and he went out and he crushed it. He ran sub 18 hours, I believe.
Just
the third or fourth fastest time, and we were together a lot early on. And I know a lot of people probably thought I was too aggressive early on with the pace, but I knew he was going to be a main competitor, and he was a guy that I was keeping my eye on to win, and he did win.
It's kind of funny though, like before the race, like people like asked both of us who we thought was like strong on the men's side. We were both like, oh, we think Alex is going to be really good. And people were like, who's Alex? Or like, is he really that good? And we're like, yeah, he's going to be up there. So now hopefully more people know his name.
Yeah, and so the pace wasn't reckless. Alex was running very smart, and he basically held the pace we started out at. So it wasn't like Western States where I was like way under course record pace and I knew it was a big reckless thing. It was just I couldn't hold it. And if I went out a little bit slower, if I was 10 or 20 minutes slower through the first third or the first 40 miles, I think I still would have encountered the same problems that I had, because I just, my legs were shot, and I don't admit, I'm not the expert at running 100 miles. I have a really inconsistent streak, so, I'm not saying, it's a fickle distance that's really presented a challenge for me, and it's been a big disappointment to not do what I want to do at 100 milers. And I throw UTMB last summer kind of out the window because that was a freak accident type of thing where I fell and hurt myself and got stitches, and I call that a no choice DNF. Whereas at Western States, I definitely screwed up a lot, and then this race I probably screwed up the most with my training and having to actually pull out, which is never good. But congrats to all the finishers out there. I saw a lot of people persevering through the whole night, maybe 2 nights into 2 nights.
Cold out there too.
It was really cold.
So definitely congrats to everyone.
That is a tough race. But I think I overtrained and kind of shot myself in the foot and really came out flat. So I got to do a lot of soul searching. And
that's definitely what today's conversation is going to be about. But I guess I don't want to dwell on this part too much, but I guess we've already seen like some speculation on the internet, or you have, about what Sage did wrong. So do you think we should touch briefly on that? Because I think it'd be interesting to talk about, but not to dwell on it too long because it's kind of negative.
Yeah, I mean, there's the training aspect. There's the over racing aspect, which is a kind of a common theme for a lot of ultra runners who get in a certain mindset, and I'm definitely not immune to that. Or overtraining syndrome type of things that lead to inconsistent performances. But then also the nutritional side, both race day nutrition, but also general nutrition. Because, as you know, Sandy's been very plant-based vegan for how long? I've
only been plant-based vegan for a little over a year.
Over a year, solid.
Vegetarian for
since I met you.
A few years,
Yeah. And you didn't eat a ton of dairy and eggs, but you've definitely gone plant-based, seen a lot of benefits from that. But I guess the point is I'm getting at, I don't want this to be a pure nutrition talk, but when you're plant-based and you put yourself out there, or any diet actually, if you're a diet that's not what the majority of people, and I should say this is just for the US, because we know what the standard American diet kind of is, essentially what normal people would say is normal. Runners or non-runners, it doesn't matter. Well, probably more non-runners, but you get the point. When you're, put yourself out there as being a certain kind of minority diet or something, you are kind of susceptible to a lot of criticism. So, a lot of people, what you see online is, Sage dropped out. He doesn't race well because he doesn't have enough protein, or you're deficient or something, which, I have been deficient in iron and B12 back when I was an ovo-lacto vegetarian a long time ago.
But a lot of runners have.
A lot of runners have who eat a lot of meat. And I'm not worried about the protein. And I don't think with poor race performances, you can't just say, oh, it's their diet. You know, you can't attribute that to success or failure. I like to think being vegetarian and eating more plants and fruits has helped me over the years, over 18 years, never having an overuse injury that's taken me out for more than two weeks. I've never had a stress fracture, knock on wood here. Never had a serious tendon or, muscle injury, aside from traumatic falls like at Chuckanut and UTB, but not from overuse. And I've run, all these 100-mile weeks for the last 18 years, year-round training. So I see that as a benefit in diet as well as long-term health and longevity, hopefully. But to say, A causes B when there's 100 different variables out there that may affect your race day performance, training's a big one, and I think that's probably the biggest one, but also just, the mental side of things, stress,
and that's
your
why
mindset.
I was honestly disappointed in those comments, and specifically targeting the food thing. But I think my sister said it really well. It's not that people basically want to defend their own diets, and that's why they attack you and they're attacking that. I definitely think there's some truth to that, but it's definitely not a good mindset just to blame one thing or come to that conclusion without knowing the whole background. What if we said Ryan Hall or Timothy Olson did bad because they eat meat? People would be pissed, and I wouldn't blame them. And the truth is, there's probably a number of reasons why. Let's say Ryan Hall, I shouldn't use names, but Ryan Hall had a performance downgrade in the past few years and ended up retiring. And so for any one person to pick out one reason, not knowing the full story, not knowing anything about the details of Ryan's life or his training or any runner, it's not the way to go. Yeah,
you can't just isolate. I mean, we've seen this with nutritional studies even. You can't just isolate. It's hard to isolate just one variable and be, A causes B without taking into account all these external variables. And that's why it's so hard to pick apart nutritional studies, is because you have to see, okay, where's the bias? Where's the, where's the kind of the things that make the study less conclusive, because there are always these external variables with all sorts of things, from diet to your mental state to your actual training. And actual training is probably going to be the biggest factor. We always say diet and nutrition and sleep and lack of life stress are big factors as well, but your actual training probably is going to determine the most, as well as your gene response to training stress and what you're eating. So as well as race day execution. You can't screw up race day execution either. And I felt like I was doing pretty well at that at Run Rabbit Run, although there was a point where I did get dehydrated because it was actually warmer and sunnier than I thought it would be on that backside of the loop between miles 20 and 30.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
We didn't anticipate that. And I don't want to come off as having all these excuses, because this just sounds like a bunch of excuses.
Dehydration is a huge problem, and it's you have to remember, you get dehydrated, your blood's getting thicker, and so it's making your heart work harder, and you're not going to feel good when you get dehydrated. And a lot of people confuse sometimes feeling bad and thinking they need more calories with actually being dehydrated. But yeah, that's not the way you want to start 100, is by getting dehydrated. And
Sandi was out there crewing for me. She's the experienced 100-mile finisher. She's done well in hundreds. I've not done well in hundreds yet. And when we went into designing our stage running training plans, which a lot of people have used to success, we use a lot of her knowledge. It's not this guy over here. You don't listen to me. Take my advice with a grain of salt, is what I always say. And yeah, I'm still learning, I'll admit to that. My race results at 100K and above have been less consistent than my race results at 50K and 50 miles in the marathon. That being said, I've raced a lot less at 100 miles and 100K. And running Black Canyon this year and winning and setting course record there was a strong performance. And so mentally I go back to that and I'm like, okay, you've been mixing it up, any surface, any distance. It's hard to do that. I race too frequently, I change up surfaces too much. At some point you need to be honest with yourself, and maybe I screwed that up. I'll admit, I screw up I mess up. I was overtrained, I think, going into Run Rabbit, and
Well, let's really dig into your training, because I think there's a lot going on there. Number one, I've been trying to I've been on your case about this for a long time, but one thing we always do with our stage running athletes is we have the goal race and we make an outline backwards from the race, and we put their training into phases, and we place the workouts and long runs, and that's like a key thing. You do not make your own training plans. And I think because of that, because you don't have that how should I say
the
it?
structure
The
of it?
whole, you don't see that entire structure from the start. Is you just start placing long runs and workouts in a way that's not conducive for you getting better and getting the most out of your training. And sometimes you place things too close together, or I think if you actually made your own training plan, that would be really important in making sure you're hitting the right workouts at the right time.
Yeah, I don't always practice what I preach.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem.
Yeah. So, with our athletes, we actually do that. What Sandi just said, we look at the calendar, you have a grid, and you count backwards, and you plan things out, and you write things in, and sometimes you make adjustments along the way, because everyone is a little bit different. But, yeah, I get lazy, and I do upload all my training to Strava, though. And so the benefit of hindsight, of course, is that, the night after I dropped out at mile 52, we get back at the hotel at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Strava, and I'm looking, what did you do wrong? And, I just did a taper talk.
Yeah.
And, I believe what I did in the last 12 days, in the last 2 weeks, was perfectly right.
Yeah,
But
I agree with that.
where I failed is usually 2 to 3 weeks out. And, during the race, I went back to my worst races where I think I overtrained. And I've had a lot of overtraining worse races, from running 10Ks on the track in college to overtraining in high school for the 1500 meters, to overtraining before marathons, to at Hanson's Brooks, getting too beat up and running really bad at marathons, to running really bad at the Euroc 100K several years ago in Colorado, to running bad at Les Templiers in France a couple years ago.
But I don't want people to take, when you say overtraining, the wrong way. It's not like you overtrained and your performance level just went way down, and you were missing workouts, and in some ways I think you may have been undertrained for the race, but it's the placement of your workouts, which you can talk more about.
Yeah, so I think it's ironic. I like to say it's, and this is speculation because I'm obviously self-biased, but Sandi's right. I mean, I was overtrained but also undertrained, and so my legs felt really crappy from the beginning, especially my hip flexors, and my climbing wasn't there. And in workouts, I've been smashing workouts here in Boulder, getting Strava segments, getting personal bests up hill climbs, but these are very short hill climbs.
Right. Well, you got you beat your PR up Niwot Ridge, which is a longer uphill tempo by a minute, and that was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's not like you totally ran yourself into the ground, or you were completely overtrained.
No, the fitness is there, and that's the enigma with overtraining. It manifests itself in different ways. So for a lot of people just get injured. You get tendonitis, you get stress fracture. That means overtraining means you've been doing more than what your body could handle at a certain time.
Yeah.
With me, it usually traditionally comes out as I come out in a race, and it only shows up in races. It doesn't show up in workouts. Totally flat-legged. So, thinking back to when I raced half marathons on the road at Hanson's Brooks, this is after I'd run a 104.32 half marathon. Going into the Philadelphia half marathon, we were trying to train to run under 104 in the half. And I was smashing workouts with my teammates, doing 2x3 miles at 4:45 mile pace, amazingly good workouts. And I was so confident, so happy. I was like, man, I'm so fit. I'm crushing these monster workouts.
Yeah.
But what happens on race day? You come out on race day, you think you're tapered well. I come out, first mile, I'm like, God, my legs feel horrible. Second mile, same thing. Never warm up into it. I end up exponentially positive splitting that race, running slower than my marathon pace for a half marathon, and just coming out really dead-legged. But I was obviously fit. You're obviously fit. You've been doing these workouts really well, maybe too well, but then the cumulative fatigue builds up to a point where when race day comes, you just come out really, really flat. You're working way too hard, even if you go out conservatively. And that's kind of what I felt like I experienced at Run Rabbit, this dead-legged feeling.
So let's like talk about the training leading up then. Like, I know you talked about when you did a bike race and kind of like 2 long runs really close to that. So can you get into more of that?
Yeah, so like with Urok, when I look back and I say, oh, you screwed up somewhere, it wasn't in the last 2-week taper. It was 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out. What did you do? And it was, I think, looking back on Strava now, and this is the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of having a training log, for some reason, the bike race probably wasn't a good idea. I did the Golden Grand Fondo 83-mile bike ride. I treated it as a long run stimulus. The problem is, I think that would have been fine by itself. The problem was I did a 30-mile long run 2 days before that. And then...
Yeah, so it was like long run on Friday.
30-mile long run in Boulder.
1 easy day, Grand Fondo.
I think I had 2 easy days between it. But
I think you did... No, I think it was only 1. I would check
You're
that.
right. You know, it was... I did the long run on Friday, the Grand Fondo on Sunday.
So those are like 2 like huge efforts within 3 days.
But then the worst part was I decided to do another long run 2 days after the bike race.
That's huge.
Which was but it was a moderate effort, but it's 26 miles. And the problem is I just think I did those a little too hard, and I wouldn't recommend doing 3 long runs in a row. We never would have our athletes do that.
No,
so
that's crazy.
I don't know what went through my head, but I think that kind of thing tires my muscle fibers out a lot, and I think I did the long runs too hard. Right. Whereas if we contrast that, so first thing I do is I look at what Alex Nichols did. Right.
Which is smart.
Well, he had an impressive performance because he had just won the Pikes Peak Marathon, which is a good training stimulus. But the other thing that Alex Nichols did, and he did run a 140-mile week, was that a lot of his easy days were really relaxed, even flat running at 8-minute, 8:30-mile pace.
Yeah, which takes like some patience from a runner that fast to run, but like it's so beneficial. Like
and whereas I get too competitive and I roll out the door here on my flat easy runs at 7-minute mile pace or 650-mile pace, which training for 100 I think now in retrospect is probably a bad idea. It's not training for a 50-mile, that's for sure. And then the fact that I was doing these long runs probably a little too hard and not long enough. I only did 1 30-mile long run. The rest were all between 25 miles or 27 miles. Whereas Coach Sandi over here knows, and most 100-mile people who are pretty experienced would say, you should probably do a long run over 32 miles in a single session just to get used to that time on your feet.
Again, as you mentioned with like Alex's training, like he did do like a 35-mile run.
He did, and a lot of really good 100-miler runners do longer long runs. So I think, in that aspect I was undertrained, not doing the long enough effort. But at the same time, I probably should have notched back my intensity to get in those longer efforts and then spread out the long runs more. While taking my easy days really easy.
Right, like you get back from your long runs and you look wrecked. Where like I don't have that all the time. Like part of the reason is like you tend not to eat or drink a lot on your long runs, and I think again going back to dehydration, if you let yourself get too dehydrated, you're wrecking your body more than it needs to be. But yeah, like it honestly like you don't look great when you get back from your long runs, and I don't think that's good.
I collapse at the door a lot of times, and I'm massively dehydrated.
Yeah, and like of course, like when you run like 20 plus miles, like you're going to be a little bit tired, but you don't have to be totally exhausted.
Yeah, and the thing is that Run Rabbit, Sandy's out there crewing for me around mile 40, and then we're right around Jason Schlarb, Rob Krar's course record pace. Alex is 2 minutes ahead of me. He dropped me because I was trying to be conservative, but I wasn't feeling good. And, Alex kept that going. But I told Sandi, I was like, my legs feel really bad. Like, I don't think they should feel this bad 40 miles into 100-miler. We have this big climb, a couple big climbs left. We have to run all night. And my legs are totally trashed. And they shouldn't have been. Because at Western States, my legs felt great at Western States, even ahead of course record pace. Now, Western States was all nausea and those problems, and that was a different challenge because of the heat, dehydration, and being really reckless and aggressive with the pace, whereas trying to be more conservative at Run Rabbit, and my legs felt way, way worse. So, it was a good learning experience, and a big bite of humble pie, really, to have that kind of thing happen and backfire pretty bad. And the leg fatigue led to me working really hard, having all sorts of pain, a collapse with running form, and I was dehydrated. After that, I did start to get a bit nauseous, and then as soon as the sun set, going up towards the 52-mile aid station, I got extremely cold. I should have had my puffy jacket. I didn't have my puffy jacket from Hoka.
Do you think that's because you're moving so slow? Because we talked
it was 'cause I was moving
before
slow,
the race that
yeah.
you could not let yourself get cold.
Yeah, my gear was planned for me to be running well.
Okay.
And when I started walking up that hill, that's because I got cold. I had a hat and gloves, so really no excuses there. It's just when I got to mile 52, I was pretty much wrecked, and I made the decision to drop. And I don't take that lightly. DNF is not a thing I take lightly. I've DNF'd on 3Ks on the track, a 10K on the track, and a 50 miler, and now a 100 miler. But it's not, usually if I could finish, I'm going to try to finish as hard as I can. And if it's a race with a big lottery that's hard to get into, where people are, it's, UTMB or Western, I'm probably going to gut it out to the finish. This one,
You weren't taking up anyone's spot for this
I was
race.
gonna suffer through some hypothermia during the night to try to walk it into the next aid station, and that's, why beat myself up a ton more and put my risk or health in risk when I was having an exponentially bad day. And so, that's why I decided to pull. But I respect all those people out there who gutted through and finished. I know there's people out there puking. Who were hiking up because in this race they have a tortoise and hare race, and the tortoises start 4 hours before you, so you get to see basically the whole field. Well, I didn't see the whole field, but I saw a lot of people out there that had started in the tortoise race, and so I got to see the mid-packers, and so you get to experience both races from the front of the lead pack. Like Alex probably passed pretty much everyone in the whole race, but you got to see, what was going down for everyone, and some people were moving really well and some people weren't, and I was moving well and then I wasn't, and I got passed back by a lot of people, and you could, cheer each other on. So that was a really cool part of the race, and the aid stations are great. The race director, Fred, he puts on this event for charity, so it's a really, really fun, unique event. So I was really thankful to be there.
It's a really cool idea. I can't imagine the work that goes into putting a 100-mile and 50-mile race together, and just to do it all for charity, that's awesome. Yeah, and
a hard-earned paycheck for Alex and Courtney too. It's a generous, very, very generous prize purse. So it helps out the pros too. But it's a fun atmosphere, and I was just disappointed in how things turned out for me. But it's part of the game, and it's part of the learning process.
Well, can we talk about the other reason why we think your body had some issues?
Yes.
I think
let's get into that. She keeps me on topic here.
I'll try.
Yeah. So what I mentioned was a lot of the fatigue was in my core section. Core's been notoriously weak. It's failed me when I tried to qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon. It's failed me when I ran track in college and high school. My hip flexors have been notoriously stiff and not flexible.
And I've heard this for years.
I've also kind of been lazy in terms of, I run a lot of miles, I like to run my workouts, and then I get home and I collapse in a chair and drink a beer. Not really, but I drink a beer at night. But I don't like to stretch a lot. I don't like to do the extra weight training or core training or drills ever, because I'm so tired from running. I just want to run and then be done with it. But Sandi will get into that now. So, my hips are failing me, hip flexors, and my form's crumpling, my stomach's crumpling. I'm just kind of weak in the core.
And I feel like I've seen that with you for a lot of your races, is where I see your form crumble towards the end of every race, if not halfway through 100 or earlier. And that really hurts your running efficiency and how you're feeling during your race. And if you hunch over, you're not going to be breathing as well. But you've known your hips and core they're weak.
They fail.
And you've known this for years now. I can remember a couple of years ago you saying, my hips gave out during the race. So you need to make the commitment to doing a little extra.
Make the commitment to doing core and stretching.
Yeah, maybe like
just she's an expert. I went to see what Sandi does. She's like an hour of core strength.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're back now. I think I cleared enough space on the camera.
Yeah, sorry, a little technical difficulties.
I'm still learning. I'm total noob at this audio podcasting thing, so we're always trying to improve. Welcome to suggestions. Strength training for the hips and core we were on.
Yeah, so something you need to work on. Actually, let's use this podcast as a way for you to commit to writing your own training plan and doing strength training.
I'm writing.
So let's say by the next podcast, Sage will be holding up a piece of paper showing his training plan for his next goal race.
My own secret training plan.
Yeah, so that's going to be something you have to do the next week.
I got to commit to it as
Hold
well as
Sage
core work.
accountable, as well as core work. So
Yeah,
maybe like you can film a video actually showing you doing it.
We're going to do some more videos. We're going to film Sandi doing them because she's the expert. We'll probably put them on her YouTube channel as well. But yeah, the core is key for running form, for efficiency, and then also not having muscular breakdown. And as I'm learning, especially in these longer ultra races, because, you know, it's one thing to get through a marathon on the road or get through even a 50K or 50 mile or 100K. But when you're out there running all day, all night in a 100-mile race, you could have some serious muscular breakdown. And to just be strong all around and to be able to persevere in the wilderness, up and down mountain trails, I think is obviously the key to surviving these 100 miles. And it's not something I've been able to do very well yet.
Right.
So listen to Coach Sandi here.
I think the thing with you, like, you've been focusing on running for like so long where you've only been like moving in a straight line, where maybe that's why like your hips have always been weak even since like high school, you said.
Yeah.
So I think it's just getting in some of those dynamic core movements. And when we say core, like I want to make sure everyone knows that includes glutes, hamstrings, hips, abs, lower back, all that stuff.
All around the
and that's
middle part of your body.
That's really key for staying strong during a race. And I can't tell you enough how important that is. Like, a lot of people have lower leg issues, like knee issues, and the problem actually could stem from hip imbalances. And especially like for Sage, like, you do sit in a chair quite a bit working in front of your computer. And I know a lot of people out there do that, and that could definitely influence some muscle imbalances and weaknesses.
I slouch with poor form with my pelvis not at a good angle. I'm going to try to work more at a standing desk workstation and then work on those stretches and actual core exercises, which we'll cover in more videos. So
right, like, well, we already did like
now.
one core video together, but I even think like you could even do a little bit more than that. Like, I think the core video we did, it's great for most people, especially people who already feel pretty strong or just don't have enough time. But I think since you're a professional runner, you could do even a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and check out the video on Sandi's channel. I really have no excuses. Again, I have plenty of time to sleep and to recover and to train. So, kudos out to all the people that are, working full-time jobs with families that are trying to squeeze in their running,
right.
And the lack of sleep. And so, yeah, I have no excuses. I need to work on a lot of stuff.
You've been doing a little bit of it, but it's not enough to make a huge difference. And like, not to call you out at all.
She's calling me out.
I'm sorry. I really don't mean to.
No, good.
But it's a good example. It's like, you've done a little bit more of the core work, but you're not like fully committed to it, and you're trying to just like get through it as fast as possible. And so you're not getting the full benefit of the exercises. And it's better if like you just like fully committed to it and got it done than just to rush through it.
Yeah. And, having bad races and having, tough times in races makes you really appreciate these types of learning experiences and hopefully things that we could move forward so I could finish 100 miler strong in the future. Or my next race strong in the future, which will be an ultra race. So
yeah, or like another thing you said, I think in one of your YouTube videos, is that you've been super consistent with your performances since you started ultra running. Like, there hasn't been major improvements, and you're kind of worried about that. But I think a lot of it's because you continuously do the same thing, and I think in order to make the improvements you want, you have to change things around. And I think part of that is core work and maybe looking at your training a little differently as well.
Yeah, making gains.
You definitely have room to improve. But you have to be willing to do the little bit extra.
I'm only 30 years old. I still feel like I'm 20.
Which is awesome. Like, and I think because of that, like, you have a lot of room to progress.
Yeah, so I mean that goes with everyone, and obviously people are different individually. Maybe your core is not your issue, but there is a lot of weight and energy placed on the core, and a lot of injuries stem from that. But some people, it manifests itself in tight hamstrings or tight calves or Achilles issues, and the strong core is going to help with your running form and efficiency. And it's always a good thing to have a strong core to get you through any surface, any distance type of race. So just always looking for ways to optimize your training and progress in your training so that you can improve and hit those goals. And I've had a rough year, but I've also had some good things, and I'm staying healthy for the most part. So I'm really thankful for that always. And
for sure.
Sandy's guidance in really getting me on topic here, and I think that's a good goal. So moving forward now. Finally, to wrap up this podcast, is there anything else you wanted to add, babe? Or anything?
Well, one thing I think I'd like to add is just your attitude after races. Like, obviously, you've had a few disappointing races this year, and I think a lot of runners actually have this bad tendency to like totally just sulk about it, and they're like they feel like such a failure. Where you have a good attitude, you look at like what you did wrong and then you move on. Of course, key for you is actually like applying that, but I think that's like the difference between like the mindset is so important, because if you just sulk about it, running's become less enjoyable, or like you might start training too fast too soon after a bad race, where I think you just have to look at the journey. And like when you sign up to be a runner who races, you're going to have bad races, and I think it's important to understand that. And it has nothing to do with your character, or like it's not like people are going to hate you for like DNFing or not having a good race. So I think it's important to just take a race as it is, learn from it, move on.
Oh, thanks, babe. That was nice of you to say. And I, over my career, 18 years of running year round, I've had whole years where I raced very poorly, all the time. I mean, the progression's never linear. You have setbacks, you take a step back, then you take a step and a half forward sometimes. And like my freshman year at college, I ran slower than I did as a sophomore in high school. That's a tough pill to swallow as a 19-year-old going into D1 school. You run slower than you did in high school.
Yeah, some people would give up after that, which is
I almost
terrible.
did. I almost did. And then running pro at Hanson's Brooks in the road marathon, I'd run a couple marathons, 221 in college, and I go pro after college. First marathon's 2:24 at Boston. I totally overtrained, running 140 miles a week. That's a tough pill to swallow. And I had horrible whole streaks. You have bad seasons sometimes, and you learn from that, and then you improve. Or you get injured and you have a setback, and you just persevere through it. Because at the end of the day, it's just running, and it's it's a lifestyle. It's important. It's something I'm passionate about. I live and breathe running, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world if you have to have a DNF or you have a bad race.
Like, your life definitely revolves around running, but you also have other things you're passionate about. And so if like running falls apart for a while, like you have other things to make you feel good.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty cranky about my bad race, but
sure.
It's not the end of the world, and there's all sorts of real world problems out there. So it's it's not something to dwell on. I enjoyed the training process for this race. I feel really fit. I feel healthy. So that's really the important thing. And yeah, sometimes you miss your goals and you fail, but that's life. So I think this is a good point to wrap up this podcast.
Yeah. Although I do want to add, if I continue with the podcast, like I think Sage and I were talking about actually getting questions from you and what you want to know from training. So I think what we're going to do is just have posts on our Sage Running Facebook page and get questions from you. So if you haven't already, like our Sage Running Facebook page, and once you see us post asking for questions, make sure to get your question, and then we'll talk about it on the podcast. So that way we're just not talking about one of us, and we're talking about you and actually helping you out. So
yeah,
definitely do that.
That's a great idea, and we'll have if we get a lot of questions, we could just kind of do a rapid fire type of training talk discussion, Q&A. So yeah, check out the Sage Running Facebook page, and we'll have a post about that probably within the next week or two.
Yep.
Doing a call for comment, so to speak, and you could just check that out. So thanks so much for the feedback. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for the support on here. It's been really amazing. I'm still trying to optimize things, so hopefully the audio quality and video quality gets better. Great having Sandi now on the show.
Thanks for letting me join.
Oh no, it's much better. So
we'll see.
Thanks, babe. All right, and stay tuned for more Sage Running podcasts.